And joining me live is Steve Tyrell, who is a famous jazz musician. And we're just delighted to have you here for this little conversation, Steve. Really appreciate it. You're a very interesting story because you really didn't get started performing in any large measure until midlife. You were kind of a background kind of a guy, producing and everything. And then came the movie Father of the Bride, and that changed everything. Can you tell us how that all happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was just, you know, I don't know. I didn't want to be a performer. I started as a performer when I was a kid. You know, I had a band, and I even had a couple of local hits in Houston. But it wasn't my dream to be a performer. I always was more interested in the songs and how records were made, and you know, that sort of thing, and songwriters and all of that. So B.J. Thomas and I kind of started together in Houston, and I always thought he was a great singer. So I got a job working for Scepter Records when I was 19. And I left Texas, and that was right in the middle of the Brill Building era. First two people I met were Carole King and Jerry Goffin.
No way.
Yeah, man, they had written Will You Love Me Tomorrow for the Shirelles, and the Shirelles were on our label. And I told BJ when I got home, I said, man, I'm going to get you on this label because you're the best singer down here, and you should be. And now I'm on a national label. I'm going to get you on it. And I did. The first record that BJ made was I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry for us, and that was a national smash. And I mainly became an A&R man and a producer and a promotion man. I would go on the road, and in those days we'd make the records, and I was helped pick the songs, and I was like the kid on the team. So we had Burt Bacharach and Hal David and Dionne Warwick on our label, and that was some education, man. I was in the studio for all of those records, and Hal David really became kind of my mentor, and Burt Bacharach, but Burt was out in the studio doing the music, and Hal and I would sit in the control room, and I can't tell you what a thrill it was to hear, you know, songs like I Say a Little Prayer for the very first time ever, or Alfie, or any of that. They would record them, and I go, wow. And I didn't know they would become legend. I mean, I knew they were great, but I didn't know they were going to become legendary songs in music history. You know?
And then you were writing The Way You Look Tonight for Father of the Bride, and somebody said, Steve, why don't you actually perform it?
Well, I didn't write it. That was written by Jerome Kern and Dorothy Fields. But I was producing the music for the movie. Because of Burt Bacharach and Hal David, I got a lot of experience working on music for movies. We had Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, which I told you just about B.J. Thomas. B.J. sang that song, and Butch Cassidy won the Academy Award. Alfie, they wrote for a movie. The Look of Love, they wrote for a movie. Theme from Valley of the Dolls. So as a kid, I early on saw how you could take a song and put it in the right movie, and it could just blow up and be a major hit. So when I went out to California, Barry Mann and I became partners in a music production company. And of course, Barry's one of the great writers of all time too. I mean, he wrote songs like You Lost That Love and Feeling, and Here You Come Again, and On Broadway, and him and Cynthia Wilde, his wife. And so I was getting movie work as a music producer, and sometimes we would do a demo, you know, for a song that I thought would be good for that scene, and I'd sing it. And I had sung in several movies before Father of the Bride, but nothing like The Way You Look Tonight. The Way You Look Tonight was their idea of that was a big moment in the movie Father of the Bride, and the director and the producer told me, they asked, could we slow that song down a little bit? Because Frank Sinatra's version was swinging, you know, and they wanted it in the scene where Steve Martin sees his daughter dancing for the first time with her husband, and he wanted to touch you, and they did. So he asked, could we slow it down? And my man, Bob Mann, who I've been working with for 100 years, a great arranger, musician. And I said, Bob, can we make that song more sentimental? And we made a demo. And I sang the demo so we could play it for Nancy Myers and Charles Shire and the people in the movie. And as I was playing it, they like loved it, you know. And they said, well, who's that guy singing? I said, well, that's me, you know. I thought if I sensed that they didn't like it, I would have said, man, I don't know who that guy is. But we can definitely get rid of him. But they looked like they liked it. So they said, well, you got to sing it in the movie. And the rest is history. I sang it in the first Father of the Bride movie. And that movie became iconic. I mean, it's been played on TV about 1,000 times. And a lot of people think I went right into becoming an artist from that movie, but I didn't. I still didn't have any desire to be an artist. But when they made the second movie, Father of the Bride Part 2, they asked me to sing in that movie. And Val Azzoli, who was the co-chairman of the board of Atlantic Records with the famous Ahmet Ertegun, heard that song with his wife, and he heard my versions in Father of the Bride Part 2, and he thought that I should make a standards album. And I said, well, who would buy it? And he said, you make it and we'll release it. And he played it for Ahmet Ertegun, who was a legend. And Ahmet loved my voice. And, I don't know if he loved my voice, but he loved what I was doing. And I mean, he discovered people like Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin, you know. So when he said I should make an album and they would release it, I finally did. And it was, the album was called A New Standard. And it came out and it did very, very well. And it was the first album of standards to come along in a long time, you know. And Rod Stewart heard that album and he started coming to my shows and asked me to work with him. And Michael Bublé, that album was before all those guys, you know, except for Harry Connick had done it years ago, and so did Linda Ronstadt. But at that era, that was kind of the first standards album for quite a while. And that got me going. Now I've made 12 albums, and this is my first #1 album.
And I want to talk about that's a perfect segue, and that is your latest album, A Song for You. You just released this 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, and it's already #1 on Billboard's jazz charts. How the hell does that happen?
Man, I don't know. Tradition. Well, I've been, you know, I've built a following for this kind of music, and so people, you know about me, this certain kind of people, and everybody went out and bought this album. It's a beautiful love song album, and you can never go wrong with love songs. You know, I mixed them up. This album, my fans had been, the last album was a Brill Building album, and my fans said, you know, you should get back and do another standards album. So I did, and I mixed in like Leon Russell songs and Van Morrison songs, a few of those, Joe Cocker, You Are So Beautiful, even Willie Nelson, You Were Always on My Mind. I mixed in with some of the great standards, you know. Johnny Mercer, and I did, what's the name? I got so many songs on my mind, I can't remember the titles of all of them. Yeah, like I did Sunday Kind of Love, Try a Little Tenderness, Come Rain or Come Shine, but also, you know, You Are So Beautiful, To Be Loved, and The Good Life, and stuff like that. Mixed them together. But they're all, the common denominators, they're all love songs.
Yeah. Steve, what's going on with jazz? I mean, jazz never disappears. It is the American music. I mean, other music that we have has influences from all over. Jazz is native to the United States of America. But a couple weeks ago, a friend of mine and I, on a Sunday night for the early show, well, we were down in the Village, and we decided we'll, you know, head over to the Blue Note. No problem. We'll get in. Nope. There was no room. And if we had gone in there, they would have called the fire marshal because there were way too many people in the darn place. And you know, we had to kind of walk around and go from jazz club to jazz club before we could find a place where we could get a seat and enjoy the music. I mean, there's a big resurgence, it seems to me, of jazz. Or if I've been asleep, it's always been like that.
No, well, I think it's been a big devolution of pop music. which made people wake up and say, hey, man, we got some of the greatest music of all time and in jazz. And that's our music. And the Great American Songbook, the songs are America's greatest contribution to the arts. And they've been played in every kind of genre you can think of. And the music of the jazz and the jazz standards are like light years ahead of just about everything. Now, great songs were written in the 70s, too. I mean, I think. I mean, I love, it didn't stop in 1970. Like, not every great song was written in the 30s and the 40s. But nowadays, it's hard for me to really love anything, you know, although there are some people that I do love. I mean, I think Bruno Mars rocks, you know, and Adele, and even, but the great music is jazz.
Yeah,
it's
I
a
agree.
conversation.
You know, we're at a time right now, and I know you don't like to get political, and we're not actually going to get political with this question, so don't worry. But we're at a time right now where it's no surprise to anybody to hear me say that we're at each other's throats over politics. If you're a Republican, I'm a Democrat, well, you're no good, or vice versa. But it seems to me that the arts transcends all that. It brings us all together. And I'm just reflecting back on some of the people who you perform for, and you know, you're a non-political performer because you perform for President Clinton, you perform for President George W. Bush, you've even been across the pond to Buckingham Palace performing for Prince Charles. I just find it interesting how jazz can bring us all together, actually.
Well, jazz brings everybody together. I mean, jazz is the opposite of what's going on. People play together, and they have conversations with their music back and forth, and it has nothing to do with politics usually. It just has to do with uniting and creating a single force that goes out. And I wish politics was that way. I've never really had that problem where if you believed one thing and I believe something else, you know, that made me better or worse than you. You know, I think you got a right to believe whatever you want. It just seems like I've never seen it so in your face as it is now. And I just don't understand why it has to be that way. I mean, we should be getting some common ground together like we do in music. We should find something that, you know, that we can agree on, or let me talk you into a little something and you talk me into a little something. But the result is something instead of being at each other's throats. Never been that way, and I'm not that way now, you know. But certainly the country is.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. Steve, you're in Miami right now, but you're going to hit the road pretty soon. You got a few shows coming up, one in San Francisco. Do you have your itinerary in front of us so we can promote something?
No, I know. I'll be next week, right, John? And at Michael Feinstein's club. He's got a great club. Now, that's a standards kind of club. But I've also played jazz clubs, you know. That I wouldn't call Michael's club. Michael is a kind of a, you know, the authority on the Great American Songbook. And he gave me my first job when I first started in New York. My first club I ever played was his on Park Avenue. You know, I was kind of talking about being nervous. I thought, what am I doing? But he's been my friend, and I'm playing his place next week. And then I'm going back to the Cafe Carlisle, where I have had a residency there for 14 years. And only Bobby Short played there longer than me. And I took his spot when he passed away. They offered me that residency in the holiday season and New Year's Eve. And I've played there for 14 years. And every once in a while, not always, but every once in a while, I'll go back in the spring and play a couple of days. So we got a week coming up on April 10th back at the Carlisle. I love it because my family. I'm out of
town, but I will be back in time to catch one of your acts at the Carlisle because.
Beautiful!
Yeah,
definitely. I would love that, man. And you know, I'm going to stay over and take my grandsons to sit to Yankee Stadium. Which,
there you go.
All my kids live in New York.
hopefully the weather will be better by the time you get here, so you can enjoy yourself out at the old.
Yeah, I hope it's not too cold.
Congratulations once again on that new album, A Song for You, #1 on the Billboard Jazz charts. Is there a website for people in our audience who are not so familiar?
SteveTyrell.com.
Hey,
SteveTyrell.com. That's pretty easy.
I'm glad you got it before somebody else did.
Yeah, I know. What if someone would have gotten it? I guess people do that. I never thought about that.
Oh, yeah, they do. They absolutely do. And then they hold it out for ransom. Steve, thanks for taking these few minutes to spend with me and my folks. And the best of luck to you with this album and all your future endeavors.
Thanks for having me, and make sure you come to.
I will. I know.
We're going to call it and host you to it.
Okay, I'll introduce myself to you. Peace out, brother.
All right, man. Take care of yourself.